Hi, and welcome to Here with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Williams, and I'm a designer, entrepreneur, and mom, and this is a space where real life and meaningful conversations meet. Today, I'm joined by an incredible athlete who has broken and set records, coached others along their athletic journeys, and is also a podcast host. He is known for his unique capabilities to train individuals and his superpower of endurance. Please welcome the American 100-mile record holder, endurance athlete, and coach, Zach Bitter.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Thank you for being here. It's pretty cool that you are here joining me today. My husband, Chase, trained with you while he was figuring out his ultra marathon journey. And you do so much more than teach people how to run. So I'm very excited to tap into that and kind of get into why you're such an incredible endurance athlete.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
So how did you get started in your running journey to begin with? Start small just because anybody can run, but you don't run.
Right. Yeah, I would have never envisioned being an ultra marathon runner when I first started running. I didn't even know what ultra marathons were back then. So I got exposed to endurance in middle school with the Presidential Physical Fitness Challenge, where one of the components of that was to run the mile. And that was kind of my first introduction into you're not just like a good athlete, a bad athlete, an average athlete. You can be like really good at one aspect of sport, really bad at other aspects of sport. And then, it just depends, right? So like that sort of experience where you kind of do like just a variety of different things kind of showed me like, oh yeah, just because like my one classmate will just smoke me in the 100-meter dash, I might beat them by a couple 100 meters in the mile. And that kind of showed me maybe that I was maybe a little better at that side of the sports world than some of the other stuff. So that kind of led me into just being interested in like track and field, cross country and stuff like that. So in high school, I started doing those type of sports more consistently. I didn't really take it overly serious, though. I didn't train like year round or anything like that until my senior year of high school, I think was the first winter I ran through. And
where did you grow up?
Oh, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So winter was
it gave you all the reasons you wanted to not run in winter if you were a high school kid and interested in other sports and things like that too. So I had a really good coach my junior and senior year of cross country who he was into running. So like that was probably one of the first adults in my life that wasn't just like, okay, these kids want to do this sport, I'm going to help them. He actually did it himself, loved it, you could tell. So that kind of got me thinking about it maybe a little more seriously. And I was good. I wouldn't say I was great by any stretch. I was able to make state and like track and cross country. I wasn't like winning anything like that or had any sort of like big future in the Olympic distance stuff where like D1 schools were coming to find me or anything like that. So I went into college with like academics as like the priority in terms of what I was going to do with that. But the school I went to, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, had a cross-country team. So I thought maybe I'll just see if I can try out for that and what that all entails. And my coach there he was very much a high mileage philosophy where like the incoming freshmen would start out at maybe 50 miles a week or so, 50, 60. And then by the time they were juniors, seniors, we'd be getting up to like maybe 90, 100-mile training weeks in the summer. And I remember thinking like, there's just no way I'm ever running 90 miles in a week when I met with him the first time. And then, you learn and you grow as you kind of figure out the sport. So I had a lot of catching up to do at that point, but I learned so much that experience of just about like what the actual inputs mean and do versus just, oh, coach said do this. Okay, I'll do that and that'll make me better. So that kind of set me up to just really explore the sport, learn more about the sport, and then ultimately kind of find out that I really liked kind of the longer side of it. So we would do like a weekly long run pretty much every week during the season. And that was the one I always looked forward to, the one that I...
and what was considered a long run at that point?
I think the longest we ran in college was like around 18 miles. Okay. So we'd work up to that. Usually it would be around 15 for the 5K, 10K guys early in the season. And then we'd get up to 18 and then kind of maybe scale back a little bit as we got closer to like championship time of year and things like that. But yeah, that kind of got me really interested in that. So after college, when I was like had the structure removed, I sort of just started running versus like doing any sort of speed work or anything like that. In fact, I was like maybe a little fried from the speed work component of training. So I just kind of like worked up to running 100-mile weeks pretty consistently. Eventually got around to realizing, okay, yeah, you can't just like ignore the speed work side of things. That's important for running, even if you're running longer races and things like that. And eventually I jumped in a 50-mile race in 2010 as sort of I didn't really even know there were ultramarathons in Wisconsin, but I was looking for a race to do, thinking I'd probably do a marathon or something like that. And then I saw this 150-miler on the list. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It was like maybe an hour and a half away from where I was living. I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. And at that time, I think I was like 24. So I remember thinking like, I'm going to do it, see what it's like, and then I'll not do another one until I'm in my 30s. So I did it. It ended up going really well. I won.
And your first ultra and you won it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, I wouldn't describe it as like an event where like the best of the sport were showing up to, but I had very little knowledge of the sport at the time. So like they all kind of meant the same thing to me at the time. Yeah. And coming from a background of like, I mean, I was a good runner, but I generally wasn't winning like collegiate cross country races or going even to like moderate sized marathons or anything like that and winning those. I could win like local 5Ks and 10Ks and things like that, maybe a small marathon or something like that. But so that was kind of like a newer experience for me. And I think that kind of fed into a little bit of the competitive side of the drive to, oh, maybe I should explore this. So
when you see success, it makes you, it kind of lights a fire in you.
Yeah. And at that point in my life too, I had already committed to running being part of my identity, regardless of what it was. At the time I was teaching, that's what I went to school for. So it was like, if I wanted to be a runner, have it part of my identity, it had to be a hobby. So I was doing a lot of the training and a lot of the stuff that you would want to do to be a good runner. But I didn't see it as like a career path yet at that time. There just wasn't really good avenues for me professionally yet. And then this was like pre-social media, pre-podcasting for the most part too. Not a lot of online coaching yet at that point. So like all the different like business avenues you can take within the running endurance world just were kind of starting to kind of trickle into a place where I felt like I could actually,
worth the risk.
It was accessible. Yeah. So I didn't do another ultra for another year after that one, but then I did 350-milers in like a 9-week time span that next year. And that really got me interested into it to the degree where I was like, okay, I'm just going to go all in on ultra marathon now. And that sort of started, it would have been beginning of 2012 was the first year where I was like, okay, everything I do is going to be focused towards some ultra marathon races. And that really kind of got me into the sport more in terms of just trying to figure out like, well, what races mean what? Because there's like, these mountain races that are 100 miles. There's road 50-milers. There's multi-day stuff. It's just such a diverse set it's hard to say ultra marathon and have it mean one thing because of the diversity.
Yeah, it's not just a certain amount of miles. Like, for instance, if you're doing a marathon, you're expecting to do your 26 miles or whatever, and then that's it. Yeah. And sometimes there's a hill.
Right.
Typically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I run with a group here in town, road running, sometimes during the week, and most of them are training for like road marathons, half marathons, and things like that. And it's like, oh, if I want a PR in the marathon, I go to Chicago or CIM. If I want to do a historic race but not get a PR, I go to like Boston or New York. And it's like the difference between those events are maybe a handful of minutes. Yeah. Whereas like in ultra running, it could be like, oh, I do a 50K on the road and run under 3 hours, or I do a 50K up in the mountains and it might take over 5 hours. Yeah. And it's both 50K, but very different experience. So
absolutely,
you get that range of different types of strengths, weaknesses, terrains, and all the training specificity that kind of comes along with it. So that was kind of my next phase, was actually trying to understand the sport a little bit more and kind of learn the history of it and figure out where I wanted to fit within it too. So living in Wisconsin at the time, not a lot of mountains, a lot of roads, especially in the winter when it was snowing, and you could usually count on the plows getting out there pretty quick in Wisconsin, which was nice. But I found out, I think it was in 2013, that like the runnable courses were just going to be easier to execute on because they were going to match my training specifics a lot closer than, say, going out to California and doing a mountain race that had 10,000 feet of climbing in 50 miles or 20,000 in 100 or something like that.
Yeah, how do you train for that?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so you're going to give yourself a little bit of a disadvantage by focusing on those events. So I started kind of thinking of it through that lens a little bit, and I actually had an interesting experience. There was a race I was training for. It was the 50-mile road championships, and I'd won it the year prior. So I was just off the course record. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go back, try to win it again, try to break the course record. That next year I went back. I finished under the old course record, but I got beat by 4 minutes by another guy.
Oh, man.
It was like, and it was this weird kind of like mental space, I think, to be in, because for one, it's like I had a really good race. He just had a better race. And
you hit your goal.
Right. I hit my goal. So I was like, okay, what do I do with this? So, and that was kind of the goal race for the year. And it was early enough in the fall that there was still time left. So I was just like, well, what do I do? And I was just looking around, and there were some other races that were close by. And there was one called the Chicago Lakefront 50 mile, which is just pancake flat. You go out 10K, you come back, and you just do that a few times until you get to 50 miles. And I went and did that. It was 13 days later. I ended up having an even better race there, and ended up running the fastest 50 mile of the year in North. I think it might have been. I can't remember if it was the world or North America, but it wasn't historically fast because the 50 mile actually has a fairly deep history relative to where ultra was at the time. It had a little bit of a lull for years, and now it's kind of in this big upswing right now. Mm-hmm. But that was enough kind of attention, I guess, towards that performance that this race in Phoenix called the Desert Solstice Track Invitational, where a lot of people will go to try to break these single day, like 24-hour or less type of distances in a really controlled, fast setting. So I got invited to that. And at the time, I remember thinking like a guy named John Olson had just broke the American record for 100 miles and became the first American to break 12 hours in 100 miles. I remember looking at my 50-mile time, which was 5:12, thinking, well, if I slow down to like a 5:45 for that first 50 mile, I should be able to like hold on and be under 12 hours. And that was about all the thought I put into it, other than trying to kind of execute that plan on race day. And this would have been end of 2013. So I went there with the goal of breaking the American record. Ended up doing that. I ran 11:47.
Oh my God.
And this kind of gives you maybe an idea of like how ignorant I was, and a lot of people are, to like the variety in the sport at the time. Is like there's a 12-hour world record where you just see how far you can get in 12 hours. I didn't even know it existed at the time. So I'm there just like thinking about this 100-mile American record all day long. And all of a sudden the race director comes up to me at mile 90 and he says, if you keep pace, you're going to hit 100 miles before 12 hours. So don't stop. Keep going to 12 hours because you're also on pace for the 12-hour world record. And I was like, well, I didn't even know there was a 12-hour world record.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because it kind of taught me like the mental side of the sport too, where just before he had told me that,
you just kept running, even past the finish line,
right?
So that you could
for another 13 minutes roughly.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because like before he had told me that, I was committed to I can't go a second per lap. It was on a 400-meter track, so like you see your splits every lap if you want to.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I was just in this headspace of just like I can't go a second faster, but I can maintain. And when he told me that, it's like I all of a sudden had this like refreshing of a goal, and I was going like up to 4 seconds per lap faster after that. So it was like he dropped that piece of information on me just in time so that I didn't like hear it too soon, speed up and blow up, but late enough that I could actually leverage it and speed up and have a strong finish versus kind of holding on for dear life.
That's good. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Yeah. And that race I think was probably the one that gave me a little bit of attention within the sport that was now just starting to grow and have like some kind of elements of professionalization within it. And the next couple of years kind of got me more exposed to that side of the sport. And then in 2014, or beginning of 2015, I signed my first like real pro contract. And at the same time, I had been kind of starting to build out a coaching business too. Just not intentionally. I just had a bunch of people start reaching out to me saying, hey, I saw this result you did in ultra marathoning. I want to try some ultra marathons. Do you coach? And I was coaching track and cross country in high school at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can probably at least help you a little bit. So that got to kind of a point where I had enough people that were interested in it where that was kind of its own business in and of itself. And then, teaching that plus training and racing started to get to a point where it's like, I could either be good at all these or try to be great at some of them or one of them. And at the end of that school year, I decided like, if I'm going to really chase the racing side of things and try to build a coaching business, the time window for that, at least the running side of it, is probably a lot shorter. So I stepped away from teaching then and moved out to California to kind of practice and train a little bit more specifically for a variety of different events. And that's when I think I really took the step into the sport full time.
Mm-hmm. How long were you in California for?
3 years. 3 years. I was in Northern California. I met my wife, Nicole, at the end of 2016, and she was in Dallas, Texas at the time. So we started dating long distance for a while, and then...
Did you meet her through the ultramarathon world?
Yeah.
That's so cool, because she is also an ultramarathon runner.
She is, yeah. And she loves the mountain stuff. So we kind of have a little bit of a variance in terms of the types of races we target. But yeah, both ultramarathoners. We knew who each other were just from like the sport, and like she'd see my results, I'd see her results. It was, it's a small enough community where people kind of knew who they were, who each other were. And then we were both volunteers at a trail running camp just outside of Houston, I believe, for it was by Team Red, White, and Blue. They did this camp where they'd bring in like a group of veterans, and then they'd open up the other half to just runners that wanted to go like learn more about running. They'd bring in a bunch of counselors that were either professional runners or coaches or had some sort of like expertise within the sport, and then it would be like this week-long kind of like education seminar, trail running stuff. So we were like paired together to lead a group there. So that's when we really got to know each other, and then started dating after that. And
the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah. Yeah. So we decided when we got engaged, like we had to figure out what we wanted to do, because obviously we were going to want to live together at that point. And we're trying to figure out a good spot that would work for both of us. And at the time, that was Phoenix. So we moved to Phoenix in 2018, kind of started our life there, which is an amazing spot for ultra running because one of the biggest race organizations in the country, Aravaipa, is there.
Oh, okay.
And like we could literally, like, you wouldn't have to do a long run any weekend. You could just jump in like a race if you wanted to and use that as like your long run. There's that much opportunity.
Well, and that's amazing because you feel the energy of everybody else. Yeah. So doing a long run on your own is probably takes a little bit more self-discipline versus, well, I'm doing this race. So,
And practicing things like aid station navigation and just the real specifics, because a lot of these things are like, you're doing a 100-mile race, you're going to get nowhere near that in training. So there's a lot of guesswork or leaning on prior experience as to like, how am I going to do when this happens, or how will I adjust if something goes off plan and that sort of thing. So having things that are a little closer to specific can be really useful to kind of learn your protocols.
Leading up to your first 100-miler, how many miles had you run in one?
The furthest I had run, I think, was 50 miles before my first 100-miler. So
doubled it.
Yeah. Well, that was actually kind of funny because I got in, there's a race called the Western States 100, which is, depending on who you ask, either the most or second most competitive 100-miler in the world, at least on the trail side of things. And it is like really hard to get into. Like the lottery can sometimes take 10 years to get in, but you can also race into it. They have like a handful of events every year. If you finish in the top 2 or on some of the bigger ones, top 3, they give you an auto entry. And I was training for this race in Wisconsin called the Ice Age 50 mile. And it was one of those races. And I ended up winning that with no anticipation of doing 100 miles yet. But once I got that, everyone I talked to is like, you'd be an idiot to pass on that.
Yeah.
So I was basically like, well, I don't want to be an idiot, so I guess I'm running 100 miles.
Yeah.
And that was like kind of an eye-opener for me too, because my first 100-miler, my first real race in the mountains, because that one goes through like a canyon section in the high country out by like Olympic Village, just outside of Tahoe, through Auburn, California. So I got to taste the mountains, bunch of heat variety in the canyons, although it was the historically cool year that year, so I didn't get as much of that as most people will get at that event. But yeah, it was a really cool way to kind of experience the 100-mile for the first time and see what the mountains were like too.
That's amazing. So what is your fastest 100-miler you've done?
I did 11 hours and 19 minutes and 13 seconds back in 2019. That was my fastest. So.
That was your fastest.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Hopefully I'm changing that soon, though. I'm training for a fast 100-miler right now. So
Okay. So then what do you think you're going to, I mean, obviously there's so much that goes into it, and I want to tap into a little bit talking about your endurance. And like I said in your intro, that's your superpower, your endurance. And a lot of that is your mind game. Obviously your body has to be ready, but you maintain great running shape. You have to make sure your feet are conditioned. You're always all these little details that, as me as a casual runner who just does it for exercise to get my cardio in. I mean, I have no idea what it would be like to run anything beyond a marathon.
Yeah.
That just seems crazy town to me. And when my husband was doing it, I was like, I support you.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 6
fun.
hours.
Yeah.
Like, I'll hang out with the kids in the pool while you go do your 6-hour run,
Yeah.
Doing anything for that long just to keep your brain stimulated. What's your go-to to maintain your mental balance to keep going?
Yeah.
Which is an easy question to say. It's like, oh, well, there's a million answers to that, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and there's going to be some individuality there, I think, too. My approach is you can't really train. You can, from a physiological standpoint, you can prepare your body for these things in a really sound way. The hard part is the harder part, I would say, is training your mind to be on for that long. So if I were to just kind of live purely as a professional athlete, where it's like, okay, I wake up, I do some training, maybe take a nap, maybe get a massage, maybe do another training session, and then kind of go to bed and have very low cognitive input outside of that, I think that would be challenging to do longer races. I like to think that you need to train the brain to be able to sustain that duration, which means just keeping it active for long periods of time. And it's like anything, you don't want to overstimulate to the degree where you burn out or just start losing interest, losing passion because you're doing too much of anything. But I find a lot of value in having busy days where it's I'm doing the training, but I'm also doing coaching programming, podcast recording, consultation calls and things like that, where I have to be on for a 12-hour block, and I can really wrap my head around what it's like to have to be focused on tasks, moving from one thing to the next and working on kind of chunking, because that's what you're doing in these races is you're avoiding the thought of, I'm running 100 miles today. You're thinking about what's the next goal. I know the rest is there, but I'll get to it when I get to it, and just manage yourself within these little chunks of time versus trying to wrap your head around the whole thing. And that sort of lifestyle.
That's what feels overwhelming.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I tell my coaching clients too, is if they've never done 100 miles before, is there are things you've done in life that have trained your mind to do this. You just need to find where those are and leverage them. So a lot of them have jobs where they'll be working on a project that won't be something they're just going to wrap up in a couple hours or even a day. So they do this. They think okay, I've got the scaffolding of what this looks like to finish this project. But once they have that, they have to go back and just execute each step, because step one has to be done before they can even really be concerned with those following steps. So they know it's there, but they know the order of operation, and kind of teaching them to recognize those spots in their life and think about that when you're out there, because that's where you're going to be able to kind of train your brain or lean on your brain's capabilities to do what you want to do versus responding to some of the negative stuff that ultimately creeps in and tries to keep you from reaching your goal.
Well, and it goes back and forth, really, because while you're training your brain to be successful in these races, in that mindset, you're also, when you leave your endurance training physically and while you're out there running, how does that help you in your day-to-day life as far as what actually stresses you out? Because it's my body just endured this really insane experience and I survived. So your fight or flight is significantly adjusted, probably forever, because you can endure this. It's oh, I can handle this. This really isn't that stressful. I just need to take a deep breath and I need to get through it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it changes your mindset on things.
For sure. It almost kind of recalibrates your threshold of what you can tolerate.
Yeah.
So then, you go back to what you're doing for work or just life in general, and you hit those points in the past where you'd have been that's my limit, I can't do more, and then you concede. And you kind of hit those points after something like this, and you're oh, wait, no, there's more layers I can get to here. And you can even continue to refine that too. I've had races where I've hit those spots where in the past it was okay, this is where I would have backed off. This is where I would have been I can't do more. And then you break through that. And after that race, you're okay, I've pushed further into that kind of mental well of what I can tolerate. And that kind of becomes the new normal for you as to what your expectation is in terms of how far you can take it. And that's the hardest part about the sport probably, is because you almost need to be doing the events to really dig into that aspect of it. And they're 100 miles, so there's only so many of them you can probably do realistically. And it just kind of goes to show you, like, using those experiences and really reflecting on them can really pay forward if you're willing to kind of unpack the experience.
Absolutely. So you're training right now
Mhm.
to beat your time.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be the case. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be a runner because we're just seeing like running got so much popular after the pandemic.
Yes.
So we have a lot more public interest in it, which allows it to grow and allows like more innovation to come into the sport. So like there's a couple big things right now where one is like shoe technology has changed drastically from it was available when I ran my fastest time. I wasn't using it at the time, but now it's gotten really refined where most of the large brands have an option that is like going to at least be
where you like lean forward a little bit more and it rolls your foot.
Yeah, the foam. It's the foam. What happened was if you take a typical running shoe, a historic running shoe, you'd get somewhere in the neighborhood of around like 65% energy return from that.
Okay.
They've got shoes now that are pushing up to like the low 90%. So it ends up being like a 4 to 5% efficiency benefit, which if you compound that over like say a marathon, you're talking about a handful of minutes. You compound that over 100 miles, it could be like, it gets a little, we're really reaching for like, or extrapolating forward with this, but it could be like 10 to 30 minutes difference just from the shoes. So like for me, it's like, well, if I can get in similar shape as I was when I was ran 11:19, I've got better shoe tech. Nutrition's gotten a lot more refined too, where we've just had more people and more studies researching just different types of fueling practices during races and what that can do for performance. And then the products have gotten better too from a digestibility standpoint, because like a big pinch point with ultras is like, yeah, you should be eating and you maybe are trying to target. It's one of those things, sometimes that's easier said than done.
Well, it could make you nauseous.
Right,
if
exactly.
You know, I remember Chase was packing peanut butter and jellies in his backpack. I'm sure you have a lot of unorthodox things that you consume to try and just maintain your energy.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of it is just like the extra variables that you get from needing to be fueling and hydrating for longer periods of time that maybe wouldn't be the case for a shorter endurance race. Or even a marathon. Most people are going to be eating and drinking during marathons to optimize performance, but to the degree that they need to do that to the extent that they're going to have like a huge digestive issue is a lot lower.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of moving parts, but yeah, between that and the shoes, I think, and just from like, I have like really good data on myself from just like fitness of where I've been at historically, where I'm at now and things like that. And I'm definitely more fit now than I have since we moved to Austin 3.5 years ago. And I'm starting to hit some of the same kind of paces at intensities that I was hitting when I was leading up to that 11:19 run I did. And I've been healthy too. Like generally over my ultra running career, I have had like really good luck with being injury resistant, but the last 2-3 years that hasn't been the case. So I've kind of had spots where it's like I was getting really close to that fitness and then I'd get hurt. And then have to kind of like start over a little bit or like kind of refocus. So I think I've got a good system now that's working well with my lifestyle and it's kept me injury free so far with this most recent buildup.
I don't want to talk too much or focus on the injury situation, but I am curious. I mean, with this being your livelihood, more or less, also it's how you keep your mental balance, I'm sure, is being able to run.
Yeah.
How does that injury affect you? How severe is it? How long does it take you to get out of? I mean, I know for myself, when I can't do my basic lifting things I do all the time, or if, I puts me into a downward spiral a little bit. So
yeah, it's not easy. I would say like it's a lot easier to say I need a break from running, I'm going to take it, and just have that be in your control versus like, oh, my body just broke down and now I want to be doing this but I can't be doing it. So
irritating.
It is, yeah, and it's one of those things. I probably do a pretty good job with this in terms of just when one of the things I really like about the sport is it's less about like, can I break that world record? That's a great motivator, but it's not the reason I do it. So I really like kind of okay, here is where things are at. This is where I want to be. This is the plan to get there. And then like watching and assessing and executing that plan. So like if you get an injury, you can do that same thing. It's just different. So I would rather be running and like kind of exercising that interest through running, but if I can't because I'm injured, I can apply it to like the rehab process, the cross training that I'll do that I can get away with if it's an injury that allows me to do that, and sort of still do the same thing within that. And sometimes in the past, like that's taught me something where it's like, oh, here's a tool that I hadn't been using historically that could actually make me better. So with this most recent one, it was biking. I mean, I've used bikes in the past, like through injury and stuff like that, but I've never kind of had it as a structural component to my training. Whereas this time, I had a case of Achilles tendonitis that kept me from running for a while. So I started like just focusing on the bike for about a month. And then I started noticing some of the benefits from that and was like, okay, this next build, when I'm healthy, I'm not just going to eliminate the bike when I'm ready to run. I'm going to keep that component in there to some degree and use that as part of the structure. So it's like, yeah, I would have rather not gotten injured, but had I not gotten injured, I wouldn't have probably been willing to make that decision to say, okay, we're going to include some biking into this training program. And I think just like based on I've been on the bike long enough now where I'm starting to see kind of where those value adds have been with the running, because now my running's been back up to full steam for a bit. And it's just like things like I'll do like hill repeats and it's like, oh, I'm way stronger on this climb from the biking mechanic. And then, or like high cadence on the pedals where you kind of keep that constant quadricep tension. It's like you start doing something like a short interval session, like I'll notice like my acceleration from the start to getting up to speed is much quicker now than it was before. So yeah, you start learning stuff like that from those sort of experiences to just refine like how you're going about things.
That's amazing. And when you are training, do you ever train with your wife? I'm curious. Do you guys run together quite a bit? Is that something that you guys enjoy to do together? Or is it more so, hey, I need to do this many miles today. Do you want to join me?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure you have your own training programs.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, we do. And it sometimes just depends on what she's targeting versus what I'm targeting. So we always will run together to some capacity, but that can range from like maybe once per week to like, oh, there's like 3 or 4 times per week because there's a way to make her workout fit within mine or vice versa in a way that makes sense, in which case we try to do that if we can. So if she's doing something like, we actually had one where it was very unspecific recently, so we weren't doing much running together. She was training for this 125-mile race up in the mountains, and I'm training for this flat, controlled looped race. So she was doing like a lot of like long hikes because it was going to be a race where you're hiking for over half of the course. And I'm training for a race where I need to be running sub 7-minute miles the entire time. There'll be no walking if things go well. So there wasn't as much opportunity for that. But now she's entering a phase where she wants to work on speed work and kind of get some of that fast running back into her. So we have plenty of opportunities for us to do workouts together within that framework.
That's awesome. And so you create programs for people regularly. That's one of your businesses that you provide. How does that experience typically go? So if I were to approach you and say, I'm looking to, run my first ultra, is that somebody that you would work with? Or are you typically working with somebody who's run an ultra or two, they're ready to go a little bit deeper into it? What's that client experience like?
Yeah, and this is something that shifted a lot since I started doing it. In the beginning, it was kind of like, okay, like how do I talk people into wanting to do an ultra marathon that I know are capable of doing it and are ready to do it, but have like this kind of cognitive limitation thing, like which I had at one point. Like I didn't think I was ever going to run 90 miles in a week, and now here I am running 100 miles in a day. So So like there's a lot of people like that where it's like they have all the tools to do it, but they haven't gotten that like interest or belief that they can do it. And that was kind of the early stages of coaching. That shifted a lot over the last few years where now we have guys like Cam Hanes, David Goggins, who are non-traditional runners. They're coming from different areas and they're doing these like huge 200-mile races, and everyone that follows them, and these guys have huge presences online. These people following them are like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So now I have a lot more people reaching out who are like, hey, I've never run before and I want to sign up for this 100-mile race. And it's like, okay, well, that's possible, but it's just gonna be a different approach. So in terms of like clients, it really does range from that, from people who are like, I've done a bunch of ultra marathons. I'm kind of at this like sticking point where I need some support to get better, or I'm hitting these, like, I'm having a hard time troubleshooting, and I want to get more specific to the person who's like, I've never done an ultramarathon before, I've hardly even been a runner, but I want to do this. And how do I start? Where do I start? And then everything in between. So I love that aspect, because as a coach, the best thing and it's funny what people's perceptions are too, because like sometimes someone will see like some of my times, like, oh, he must just work with pros. I'm like, no, most of my clients are not pros. They're like people who are just, they have a job, they want to do this because they're passionate about it for one reason or another, and working up to that goal. And I like to have that huge span of variety in my clients, because it keeps me as a coach like aware of the variety of different needs, because I don't think there's one very specific, this is the way to do it. I think there's multiple ways to get to 100 miles, and the bigger driver is going to be like, how do we make this fit your lifestyle in a way that's sustainable? And when you work with a variety of different people, you have to find those best paths forward for their lifestyle versus what maybe looks best on paper.
Absolutely.
And that's really fun for me to help people figure that out and get comfortable with it too, because at the end of the day, them trusting it is a huge mental piece. So if they go in like with a really good plan that fits their lifestyle, but they don't trust it because they think they should be doing twice as much, that gets...
It goes against what you're teaching them or showing them to do.
Exactly, yeah. So
I think it's really intimidating to go into a sport like this, especially as an adult. And you really do have to put a lot of trust in who's telling you what to do. And nobody knows your body. Nobody knows what your time constraints are if you're just buying an online program, because one shoe doesn't fit all,
Yeah.
So that's really amazing. And it's nice that you take the time to get to know them. I know you set up regular calls, and that's really cool.
Yeah, the communication piece is huge, because you can get so much data from running now, and then you can try to program something that looks great, but there's always adjustments to be made. And a lot of times those aren't always clear by just me looking at their GPX file on Training Peaks or whatever platform that we're looking at. I can get a lot of information from that, but to the degree it's still limiting compared to me talking to them and saying like, okay, you just did this interval session, you just did this long stretch. Tell me how this felt throughout it. I can gain more about like what direction to go with them, or just as much at least from that as I can from looking at like, okay, how's your pace improving at this heart rate, or how's your pace improving at this intensity, and things like that.
Well, and there's so much science behind it that honestly, a regular Joe Schmo would have no clue of what you're looking for. And it's amazing. And what you're doing, it goes beyond. I mean, you're talking about nutrition with them too.
And that's a huge one for this too. It's like I've had so many clients where they've been ready to have their race, and it's been just hard for them to figure out what to be doing. And then we look at what they're doing nutritionally, hydration wise, and we find like, oh, this is really just this shift right here, and you're going to have a wildly different experience. Or pacing's another one too.
Yeah.
I think people will most people go out too fast in these races, and then that really makes that second half of the race a lot more challenging, where sometimes you get them to kind of hit that pacing a little bit better in the beginning. They have this like wildly different experience in the second half of the race, and they're just like...
I mean, that's so natural though, because everybody's coming out the gate so excited at the beginning of a race, and so we're all running, we're all going.
And easy
then
might
suddenly,
be too fast.
Yeah. I mean, I can see you coming out too fast in the beginning because you've got the energy. It's exciting.
Yeah.
But you start to feel it probably around mile 30, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like breaking 24 hours in the 100 mile is a big goal within the kind of running community. That's like always seen as something like a pretty big... It's kind of like qualifying for Boston, essentially, in the running world, I should say the like road running world. But when you unpack a sub 24 hour 100 mile, we're talking 4.2 miles per hour. So like you start thinking like,
a very long time to be.
It is. But then it's also like, well, 4.2 miles per hour, if someone's like, let's say someone goes out for a really easy, relaxed run and they average 5 to 6 miles per hour. It's like if they start out the race at 5 to 6 miles per hour, they're going too fast. They're going to get to the halfway point much quicker than they should. And then they're probably going to spend a ton of time walking 2 miles per hour in the second half. So it's like getting them to kind of think of it through that lens of like, let's get a little more like even with this. So like, yeah, sure, go ahead and run 5 to 6 miles per hour if that's what feels comfortable. but let's put some hiking, walking breaks in there to kind of bring that average pace down a little closer so that you're almost treating it like a big interval session of you'll do phases of running, phases of hiking, phases of running, phases of hiking in a way where we're kind of like reducing that mechanical loading that you'd be doing if you just said, all right, I'm going to just run 5 to 6 miles per hour until I can't anymore and then walk the rest of the way, which is not the best way to get there the fastest.
Yeah. When Chase did his first ultra, they allowed people to run the last, because it was like 10 you do 5 10-mile laps or something. And he asked me if I would run his last 10 miles with him. I'm like, are you sure? Because I haven't run 10 miles in a bit.
Yeah.
I could probably like pick up and do 6 or 7 comfortably, but I was concerned.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, I'll do it. He's like, don't worry, there's going to be some walking in there. And it actually did save me, and I was okay. I could do a few miles and walk a little bit and all that. But it was just so funny because I was very worried that I was going to ruin his last lap. It's like, you've already done 40 miles and then you pull me in. I'm like, this is a horrible idea. But we did it and it was good. But that was honestly a good structure to where it feels more attainable and a little less scary.
Yeah. And if you do that strategy, you're almost certainly going to be passing people at the end, which is just a great way to feed into the positive mental state because you feel like you're doing what you should be doing. And then the brain goes positive versus negative versus the other direction where you feel like you're falling apart and people are going past you. Then you're like, what am I doing wrong? Why is this not working? And then you kind of spiral the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If ultras didn't exist, what do you think your competitive outlet would be?
That's a good question. You know what? I'd probably still be running. It would just be like marathons or something like that. And, I wouldn't be a professional marathoner. I don't think I had like that sort of ability to be competing in nowadays, like if you're a US marathoner and you're not running sub 2:10, you're doing it as a hobby, not a profession. But I do think I think about this sometimes too, because I never really explored the marathon. And I think it's one of the most interesting distances because it's like this perfect blend of length and intensity where it's fast enough where you're going quick, but it's also long enough where if you make a mistake there, it's going to be just disaster at the end. So part of me is like, if I could live my life twice, it'd be fun to just invest the same amount of energy as I have in ultra marathoning or fast runnable hundreds into the marathon and see how fast I could get at that. And I think I would be pretty fulfilled with that approach. I think it would have been fun to just see where that ended. But that's probably where I would have ended up.
Okay. What's your furthest distance you've ever run?
125 miles.
125.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
do you see any longer ones on the horizon for you? I mean, we were just chatting earlier, and you said 240 was one that somebody was talking about, but they call it a 200 miler, which is ridiculous.
And you get these timed events where there's a 6-day event that you see how far you can get in 6 days. And I just had the woman who broke the world record for that. She went 603 miles in 6 days. So she's out there for 6 days just averaging 4 miles per hour every day, basically. So it gets as wild as you want it to. In terms of the multi-day stuff, I'm really interested in it, but I'm still really looking for what is that draw that's going to pull you into it, where when you get to that spot where you're like, oh, I'm heading into the second night, I still want this bad enough to be like, this is worth it, versus why am I doing this?
Yeah, you never want to feel like you're torturing yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm still kind of exploring that, but I do think one race that I've done a few times that I just haven't figured out for myself is the 24-hour. We just see how far you can get in 24 hours. That one seems reasonable from I can hack sleep deprivation for 24 hours, just a little bit of caffeine at night. That should take care of things. But I just haven't done it well yet. So some of it's been just because I've jumped in them after goal 100 builds and then kind of thought okay, maybe I can figure this out, and that's just not been the case. Or I did one where I really did focus on it, but I was trying a training approach that in hindsight I don't think was a very good idea. Kind of showed up maybe a little bit fried. So that's one I'm really interested in that I do want to take a good swing at, because I think based on my 100-mile pace, I should be able to put up a world-class 24-hour distance. So that's one I think I'd like to explore. But right now, my thought is I'm still really interested in trying to see if I can run faster in the 100-mile.
Yeah.
And I've probably got a few more years. I'm 39 now. The world records for 100 miles were broken by 40-year-olds. So it's not like I don't have
time.
Right. Yeah. I'm getting into that like prime 100-mile.
Yeah.
So, but realistically, like I probably don't have, when we're talking about like, I think my potential for 100 miles is probably something like in the mid 6-minute mile pace. So like I'm probably not doing that anymore in my mid 40s, realistically. So I don't have a huge timeline to go after that. Whereas with the 24-hour, I think like maximum potential within that one is probably a little bit longer. So I don't want to necessarily like dedicate half a year to a 24-hour that I could be towards a flat 100-miler when I maybe have a handful of years left to really kind of still optimize my potential in that one.
I love that. That's
Yeah. So,
cool.
but if I start hating it, then I'll pivot, because that's the one thing that I've always kind of leaned on is like I have to enjoy the process, because if I don't enjoy the process, the race isn't going to go the way I want it anyway. And I've run fast enough where I'm just not going to outcompete myself if I'm not really invested and interested in it. So,
have you ever gone into a race and you're just not in the right mindset and either A, disappointed yourself because you're like, I knew that this was because I was just off, or B, have you been able to turn it around and made it a really positive experience?
Yeah. I did a race in 2018 where I went for, or no, it was 2017. I did a race where I was like really excited, or I thought I was really excited to go after the world record for 100 miles at the time. And I was like doing all the right things in training. In hindsight, I look back at it, I was just like, I'd been rinsing and repeating that same kind of structure for too long. And I was starting to lose a little bit of that edge, that little bit of excitement. And like, I just like blew up at 100K essentially, maybe a little under 100K, and like dropped out. And after that race, I was like, yeah, I didn't have it mentally for that race, even though I was pretty fit going into that. Like all the training data seemed like it was like, yeah, you should be able to pace for the world record and potentially get it if things go well, but mentally wasn't there. So what I found works well in that scenario is if you need a physical break, that's one thing. But if you just need like, I need to rest my mind from this same approach, this same inputs, I've just gone and done something like more in the mountains or in the trails and done a training block like that. So in 2019, I was kind of in that same spot again, where after 2018, I was a little bit just burnt out on the flat runnable stuff. So I spent the first half of that year training for the San Diego 100-mile, which is a more mountain trail-based race. Had a great time training for it. Then when I came back to running the flat stuff after that, I was like so excited to get back to it that when I got to the race that I did later that year, that's the one I ran my fastest 100-miler and broke the world record there. So
wow.
It was like, okay, there's something there. You need to go into that. Like just recognizing, because it's easy to say that. It's easy to say like, oh yeah, you should be motivated and excited. It's another thing to know what that actually feels like and what it doesn't feel like. So for me, I've done it enough now where I know where optimal excitement is and where it's not. So if I'm in that spot where I'm like really excited to do the workouts and like it's really motivating and I'm almost like holding myself back from doing too much, that's the space I want to be in order to really execute a fast runnable 100-miler or any of the terrains that you train specifically for.
That's amazing. And I'm a big person of routine, but you have to switch up your routine probably just to deal with the different times of day you're going to be running. You need to be able to handle all of the different things that the world will throw at you while you're doing these races.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're able to maintain some sort of routine on a regular basis? And is that kind of your foundation, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it is interesting. I would say like this takes, and it's somewhat of an ongoing process too as things evolve. But like, since my big inputs during the day are like podcasting, coaching, and then my training and racing, it's like there are times of years where some of those are a little more low key and times of year where those things will flare up and there's a lot more opportunities and you want to take advantage of them. So where it's the hardest is when those all kind of start flaring up at the same time and you have to be like, all right, which one of these do I pull back on so I'm not just good at all versus being able to do everything. So finding that balance of like, what is a reasonable amount of podcasts to record and produce per week in order to, be able to still do the other things at a high level, or what are the number of coaching clients that I need to draw a line at and say, okay, I'm not taking on anymore at this point, so that I'm not like, bleeding into my training by
overextending yourself in other ways.
And then the other piece too is just like, uh, since we moved to Austin, I've been 100% remote working for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. I get tons of flexibility. I can plan my day exactly the way I want to. But I could also just, other than my wife who works at home too, I could just be by myself that entire time. I could go run by myself. I'm talking to people on the phone and, over Zoom and whatnot and podcasting, which is a little bit of a social aspect, but it's just different from actually doing things with people in person.
Being here like this.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I learned like more recently was like, I need to have that component in the structure so I don't get to the point where I'm like, because I can do that. Like I can kind of get into that mode and just say like grind, grind, grind. And then you kind of slowly start losing interest in the things you're doing and you don't really recognize it because you're kind of normalizing it as you go. So I go to rogue running 3 times a week now and I build that into the structure. Like Coach Kathy, who runs the group that I run with there, she sends out a weekly thing where it's like, here's the workouts we're doing. So when she sends that out, I look at that. I'm like, okay, what's the group doing?
That I can tap into.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then what do I need to do on those other days to maximize the peaking that I need to do? So it's like taking their stuff and finding where does that fit within my program and then building this other stuff I need to do for my program on those other days. And that's just a great way to kind of get that like social aspect, that in-person stuff and watch other people kind of be working on goals and things in person is just different too, where, you have people training to try to break 2:45 in the marathon and like seeing them have good workouts and being able to pace them and stuff like that too is a lot of fun. So
I'm sure it's really interesting too, being a part of that running community and being able to run with these people who have such different goals than you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it helps to give you an edge when you're coaching others, within your own business.
Yeah. Just knowing what people are interested in too. Mm-hmm. Like, well, what are their questions? Like, what are they curious about? Like, where are the pinch points? Like, and things like that, and helping problem solve. And it's a lot of fun for sure.
That's cool. You mentioned to me that you are creating an app right now that you're pretty excited about, a training app.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what you're trying to hope comes from it?
Yeah. So I would say like when we moved to Austin, I sort of like restructured my coaching and it's been like something I've been building for the last couple of years, but I've been trying to build it a step at a time versus trying to do it all at once. Mm-hmm. So the first order was kind of like really dialing in the one-on-one coaching side of things where it's kind of the more involved, like I'm on Training Peaks, building out your plan. We're getting on a call frequently. We're emailing, texting frequently, and just getting that side of the business really dialed in. Then the other thing is like, people have all sorts of different needs and desires with coaching. So like other people, they just want a plan. So like building out like a catalog of plans that someone can just go and get if they want to run 100 miles or 50K or a 5K or a 10K, like they can get that at different levels that follow my philosophy. And then the next step was building out like an online group where it's like they work off my pre-made plans, but we meet once a week on a Zoom call as a group and we troubleshoot, we adjust plans to meet their needs a little more specifically and kind of build a community there.
It's nice and they can learn from each other too.
Yeah, exactly.
With their trials they're experiencing.
Right. Yeah, and the group is fun because it's a pretty wide range. You've got like people doing marathons, people doing multi-days and everything in between. So yeah, it's a fun group to have. And then the next piece was like, well, what about that person who is like interested in running? They don't really know where to start. There's a lot of education. They're not going to be running 6-7 days a week. They're probably going to be running more like 3 or 4, and they really want to get into running. But they want something that's maybe a little more like, all right, I can go on this app and I can get that program and it's a relative low price point. So there's not a huge opportunity cost for them there. They can feel comfortable failing if they need to within it and stuff like that. So I'm building that out right now, which should be coming out in the next month or 2.
Oh, that's soon. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's going to be a lot of kind of like beginner stuff for like people who are new to running or people who don't have much structure in their training and want to start doing that for the first time. I am going to have like what I'm going to call like an online run club where we get more like specific with workouts on a per week basis, and people who want to like just say, I want to become a better runner and just really learn like what does the rotation of a week look like, can jump in on that and then kind of get those like a little more variety of like, here's a beginner version of this workout, moderate, advanced. So whether they're kind of like really new or advanced and need a structure can kind of join that side of the app. But yeah, that'll be something fun, I think, to add to to the catalog of stuff.
Yeah. Add it to the list.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So at that point, I think I have every coaching input that I want, and it's just like kind of maintaining it from there, which will be kind of nice to have that.
That's really
Get to that point.
exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I hope that comes out seamlessly. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm working with a group who does all the back end stuff, so I don't have to worry about like app crashing and whatnot, which is
good.
Yeah. Because I
That's
thought
the worst part.
You're right. Yeah. Because that was kind of the first fork in the road. Is like, do I use a program that's there, and I use my programming expertise, and they can troubleshoot all the back end, or do I actually build the app myself? And when I looked into building that myself, I was like, this just seems like a great way to have a headache when the thing crashes.
Yeah. Not worth it. We've got professionals for that, right?
Yeah.
So something I like to ask all of my guests is, do you have any sort of little joys that kind of anchor your day to day in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for every day, maybe it's something I need to work on. Maybe I'm just joyless day to day.
I doubt it. It could be something as small as like having your coffee in the morning, you know? Just like little somethings that kind of
what?
You.
I would say like I definitely have a lot of rituals like that where it's like, I wake up, I have a cup of coffee, and that's kind of how things start, and that jump starts things. I would say like one that I think keeps me motivated though is more like the end of the day. So I usually finish up around like between 6 and 7 or so, and then it's like, all right, I'm gonna make dinner and relax with Nicole for a couple hours before we go to bed. So it's sort of like that's the driver to like, all right, because I do work for myself, so I could get lazy and neglect stuff, but like knowing like if I do that, I'm going to start bumping into that because eventually you got to get stuff done. So kind of having that as like the motivator of like, all right, do these things so then at the end of the day,
you can enjoy your time together.
Mhm.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, thank you for being here. We've come to the end of our time. It flew. I just looked over at the clock and like, oh my word, we've got to close it up.
Awesome. No, it's been a blast.
But thank you for being here. You can learn more about Zach at zachbitter.com or on Instagram. It's Zach Bitter. X is Z Bitter. Substack, Zach Bitter. And then you can also follow your runs on Strava.
Perfect. Yeah. Come find me. I'll be out there.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for spending a little time here with Laura. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd love if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with a friend. It helps more than you know. And you can find more about me, today's guests, and everything we talked about in today's show notes. And until next time, take care of yourself and don't forget to find the space and time for what really matters.